Okay, this might sound crazy, but video games are entering into a gambling epidemic. It seems whatever game we decide to play, some element of gambling will be involved through the game's mechanics, imagery, or features. And you've probably noticed it too. Gambling has infiltrated video games. I want us to explore the rise of this epidemic together. And to do this, let's first start at gaming's hottest genre right now, where this gambling epidemic is running riot. Roguelikes and lights have absolutely blown up in recent years. What used to feel like a niche genre is now one of the most successful formulas in modern gaming. A roguelike involves a simple game design. Each time you play, you begin a run that is procedurally generated. That run gets harder and harder and lasts until the player either completes the run or fails. If they fail, this causes a permadeath that makes the player start again from zero. The success of your run depends on the skills, actions, and decisions you take throughout your run. However, a big factor for what makes a good run is mostly determined by luck. The gameplay design of both rogue genres overlaps with the mechanics found in gambling or probability-based games. But before we explore the gambling epidemic within roguelikes, I want to quickly set this thought within all of you. Why do you enjoy rogues? I ask this because I am fascinated by how each one seems to release and instantly be met by huge praise and popularity. I mean, there is like over 20 rogues that are considered as must-have games. That is unheard of from one genre. I recognize how great these games are, and I also enjoy so many of them. And the ones I haven't played, I can be confident that they will also be good. But I want us to explore whether we actually enjoy rogues, or if we were hooked by its gambling-like mechanics. And if we are, where is the line between this? Roguelikes rely heavily on variable reward schedules, a reinforcement system studied in behavioral psychology and famously associated with Skinner's operant conditioning experiments. This system appears primarily through the game genre's procedural generation and randomized rewards. Each run generates different enemies, rooms, upgrades, or items, and players cannot predict which rewards they will encounter. For example, a player might defeat an enemy and receive a common item, but on another attempt, they might receive a rare upgrade or powerful synergy. Because these rewards appear unpredictably, players remain motivated to continue playing in the hope that the next room, chest, or encounter will contain something more valuable. The key point is that in these systems, players are rewarded unpredictably rather than at fixed points. Research has shown on countless occasions that variable reward schedules provide stronger and more persistent engagement because the brain releases dopamine in anticipation when the outcome is uncertain rather than guaranteed. This constant rush of uncertainty and dopamine keeps players repeating actions because the next attempt might produce that neurological hit. In combination with this, roguelikes also deliberately design runs to be short and restartable, often lasting from 5 to 30 minutes. Short runs reduce the perceived cost of another attempt. Players feel that starting again is only a small investment in time. Combined with randomness and the possibility of a perfect run, this creates a cycle where each attempt feels like it could finally be the successful one. Taking all of that together, these systems create the one more run loop. We have all had this feeling or heard when watching a video on a roguelike, I just can't stop playing. I find that really fascinating because it parallels the mindset of a gambler who also can't stop gambling. And it demonstrates how this structure closely resembles the reinforcement patterns found in gambling systems. Kind of scary, right? Look, this game design isn't some new system that has plagued gaming recently. We can trace its principles to the emergence of arcade games. The arcades were designed for each run to be short, with difficulty increasing dramatically, causing players to fail often. And because each run was barred by a paywall, it kept players running more and more.
Physically, you can become physically dependent upon it because you get an arousal and then a relaxation response. It's the same as a roller coaster or gambling.
That arcade model is very much at the forefront of roguelikes and alike designs. Look, this is where things become conflicting. I can already sense that some of you will correctly raise that these are just great games and nothing more. I am not denying that at all. Rogue's overall package do deliver an incredible and addictive gameplay loop, but I can't accept gameplay like this. A lot of these rogues feature autoplay features like auto shooting, auto movement, and I mean in Vampire Survivors, you legit can stand still for your entire run and still win. And when you pair this with numbers go up features that all these games seem to have, you see why I'm claiming these games are an absolute ADHD overload of all gambling-like elements. It's obvious that a huge part of roguelike success is how well they do implement the key gambling-like game design elements that keep us absolutely hooked. And with their ever-increasing popularity, the amount of rogues available will only continue to rise. And this is where the epidemic begins, because some of these new rogues have taken this gambling design philosophy to the absolute extremes.
Welcome to the clown show.
Balatro is the epitome of that very statement. In Balatro, the player scores points by assembling poker hands such as straights, flushes, or full houses, then modifies those hands with joker cards, multipliers, and run-based upgrades. Balatro contains no real money wagering, no loot boxes, and no microtransactions, and yet it immediately triggered a huge gambling debate, albeit one fueled by Peggy. Peggy initially reclassified Balatro as a Peggy 18 game. The concern was that the game contained prominent gambling imagery and contained material that instructs about gambling. This case study takes us to our first major legal question in this video. Does the imagery of gambling determine a game as gambling? Rating boards define gambling-like imagery as the depiction or simulation of gambling-like activities, environments, or mechanics that visually resemble real gambling. The three things that instantly stand out in Balatro are the cards, the chips, and the flashy, colourful lights. Cards are a prominent item within many gambling games. They are found in games that date back to the 12th century in China, and through the years they have gained an association linked to gambling. However, a deck of cards is not inherently gambling. If it were, then games like Uno and countless non-gambling card games would all have to be treated as gambling products, which would of course be ridiculous. The same applies to chips and bright casino-like lights. These are symbols associated with gambling culture, but they are not by themselves gambling mechanics. However, Peggy's initial objection was not just that the game contained cards and chips, but that it taught players how poker hands work. That was at the heart of the argument, because poker is an age-restricted gambling game, and teaching hand rankings could be seen as providing knowledge transferable to gambling. Peggy effectively treated the game as a form of gambling instructions for poker. There is a logic to that argument, as someone not exposed to poker would have to learn some element of it to be able to play Balatro. I personally know friends who have learned poker through playing Balatro. However, Balatro is not poker in any meaningful way. There is no betting round, no bluffing, no table psychology, no dealer, no reading opponents, and no real stakes. What it borrows from poker is primarily a recognizable scoring vocabulary. The actual game is a fantasy score attack roguelike built around absurd synergies and escalating multipliers, and not a realistic simulation of gambling. And anyone who played the game could see that. That distinction was key, as Peggy's independent complaints board overturned the Peggy 18 decision and lowered the rating to PG-12, stating that although the game explains poker hands, it contains fantastical elements that mitigate this. Peggy also said it would develop a more granular criteria for gambling themes going forward, and it seems they have. I mean, they rated Clover Pit as a Peggy 12. Now, this is kind of crazy. How the hell has this game ended up as a PG-12? You could slap this game in any online casino and it would fit right in. It looks like Peggy feared the backlash caused by Balatro. Or potentially it's because Balatro exposed a regulatory confusion between gambling aesthetics and gambling mechanics. Peggy initially treated gambling-themed symbolism and transferable poker knowledge as enough to justify an adult rating, but the later appeals showed that aesthetics alone are not the same as actual gambling simulation. Should we demonize Peggy for this? I don't think so. I genuinely think Peggy couldn't unsee that gambling feeling when playing Balatro. Those roguelike elements of addiction, but now also overlapped by the casino themes, provided a package that looked like gambling, felt like gambling, and played like gambling, but of course wasn't gambling. That grey area between gambling and games is what I want to keep exploring throughout this video, because I'm genuinely fascinated in understanding when does a game go too far and strive into gambling. Okay, but what does this and Balatro have to do with there being a supposed epidemic of gambling-like games? Well, what has followed Balatro is an epidemic of gambling-themed roguelikes that lean even harder into casino themes.
Let's go gambling.
There is now a roguelike or light for every single casino-type game, leading me to coin this genre of rogues as casino-likes. Traditional roguelikes already rely on uncertainty and variable reward loops. But when developers start layering casino imagery on top of that structure, the experience moves closer and closer to simulated gambling. So when a game uses gambling imagery, it does more than just create an aesthetic. It can recreate the emotional rhythm of gambling itself And if someone is already vulnerable to compulsive behavior, those cues can become even more powerful. It could trigger urges that make it harder to disengage. And once that becomes a trend, the line between one more run and one more spin starts to fade. So far, we have solely focused on rogues because I really wanted to emphasize how normalized gambling-like mechanics have become in some of our favorite games. However, gambling-like mechanics are not exclusive to roguelikes, and I don't want this video to be an attack on them. Many of the psychological systems that make roguelikes compelling appear across a wide range of other modern game genres. Game design has long relied on behavioral reinforcement systems that keep players engaged, and many of these systems closely resemble those studied in gambling psychology. At the center of this design philosophy is the risk-reward loop. Players are encouraged to risk something valuable in the hope of receiving a greater payoff. The uncertainty of the outcome creates tension and anticipation, two emotions that are central to both successful games and gambling environments. A clear example of this can be seen in the recently popular extraction shooters, a genre built almost entirely around risk management. In games such as Ark Raiders, players enter a match carrying valuable equipment that they may have previously earned or purchased within the game's economy. The objective is to explore the map, collect loot, and successfully extract before being eliminated. The key mechanic here is that everything the player brings into the match is at risk. If they fail to extract, they lose everything. This creates a powerful psychological tension. Every decision becomes meaningful because the stakes are real within the game's economy or player's stash. Players must constantly evaluate whether to continue pushing deeper into the map in search of better rewards, or to retreat and secure the items they have already collected. Doesn't this sound like a familiar gambling design? That's because it closely mirrors what behavioral researchers call push your luck mechanics, where players decide whether to risk rewards for the chance of obtaining even greater ones. Similar decision structures exist in many casino games. For example, gamblers decide whether to continue betting in hopes of increasing their winnings or stop and walk away with what they've already earned. And like gambling on continuous losses, these players don't know how to stop, as they have to win their items back. The emotional experience created by these mechanics is also incredibly similar. The fear of losing valuable items generates tension, while the successful extraction with high-value loot produces an intense feeling of relief and reward. These emotional highs and lows are not accidental. They are the direct result of a system designed around uncertainty and risk. All of that really makes you realize what has helped Ark Raiders feel so addictive and take gaming by storm. I mean, this cracked out peanut has also helped.
Make peace with your god, mother.
But the design principles don't stop there. Extraction shooters often amplify this gambling-like effect through randomized loot systems. Most items discovered during a match are determined through RNG, meaning players never know exactly what they will find. This unpredictability triggers the same psychological mechanisms studied in gaming environments. As I mentioned, variable reward systems are among the most effective reinforcement structures for maintaining long-term engagement. The possibility of discovering a rare item, no matter how small the probability, creates a constant sense of anticipation. In many looter-based games, the excitement of the potential reward becomes just as powerful as the reward itself. Think about a time when you've chased a certain item for a game. That rush you feel in nearly getting the item is often a bigger dopamine hit than actually having it. That feeling is why looters are so effective. Oftentimes, you don't even know what you're looting for. You're just excited to be looting for something potentially valuable. Of course, games like Ark are also popular because of other reasons like the setting, graphics, gameplay, and even community that makes the game as good as it is. But this combination of risk-based decision-making and unpredictable rewards forms a powerful gameplay loop that can be extremely difficult to escape from, and can be the determining factor on why we keep playing. Especially on games like Ark, which doesn't really have an endgame or something to work towards, as players have started to mention. Hopefully by now you can see how so many games are littered with so many gambling-like mechanics that just keep us playing. Let me know in the comments of what your experience has been like playing popular games. Can you explain why you enjoy them? There's no right or wrong answer, and I'm just interested to hear your thoughts. It is important to establish that gambling-like gameplay mechanics do not automatically constitute gambling. Many games contain systems built around chance, risk, or unpredictable rewards, which satisfy the first element of gambling, the element of chance. But this element alone is not enough to constitute a game as gambling. Gambling also has to meet the other two elements, the second being consideration, which is just the player staking something of value, usually money, and the third element, monetary value or prize. This final element is the most important distinction when considering whether something constitutes gambling, and this is where the debate of gaming's worst creation lies: loot boxes. I'm not going to bore you with what loot boxes are, as there are thousands of videos on them. What I can offer is a legal perspective on the matter based on my experience as a paralegal. That you can't find anywhere else on YouTube, so why not subscribe? Anyways, the key feature of loot boxes is that the player does not know what they will receive before opening the box, because the reward is determined through a randomized probability system, which obviously resembles other gambling systems such as lotteries or slot machines, where players pay for the chance to receive a valuable reward. The question I want to explore is whether the loot box epidemic can in any way constitute gambling. Well, this is where the legal debate becomes complicated. For something to count as gambling under most gambling laws, the reward must have real-world monetary value. This means the player must be able to convert what they win back into money or something of financial value. Game publishers typically argue that loot box items do not satisfy this requirement because the items are purely digital and cannot be officially exchanged for cash within the game. But this is the problem with this interpretation. Do the items really hold no monetary value? Any Counter-Strike player would tell you otherwise. In CS, players can open weapon cases that award cosmetic weapon skins with varying levels of rarity. Some of these skins have become extremely valuable. So how is this not gambling? Well, companies such as Valve typically argue that these items obtained have no guaranteed real-world value, and players cannot officially cash out items for real money within the game itself. Instead, the real money trading often happens through third-party marketplaces created by players or within closed-loop ecosystems. Because these external markets operate outside the game developer's official system, some regulators have concluded that the developer themselves is not offering a gambling service, even though the broader ecosystem functions similarly to one. This legal distinction has allowed many loot box systems to continue operating without the gambling label. Some of you may be asking, how isn't that gambling? To answer that, we need to understand the Gambling Act. Its purpose is not to make gambling illegal, it's to regulate all commercial gambling in England to ensure it's a crime-free, fair and safe. And this is the same approach in practically most countries' gambling laws as well. This is what people misunderstand about the law's approach to gambling. The law is there to just regulate, so even if loot boxes were deemed as gambling, it wouldn't be banned or removed. The game developer would just have to be under a gambling license to use them. Of course, this would likely lead to the removal of loot boxes from a lot of games, but in theory, they can still exist within that game. Now, what I can say is, this is gambling-like in every sense of it, and more should be done by these game developers to ensure better protection for its players. Just because loot boxes are not legally defined as gambling, does not mean it doesn't satisfy every element in some way to give a gambling-like experience. Valve know what players are doing and they are not oblivious to it. I mean, they are actively being sued in New York right now for it. Let me know if you want a video on that. These game developers are providing gambling-like services and detaching themselves away from the consequences to avoid the gambling regulations. Whether loot boxes are deemed as gambling solely depends on whether digital items should legally be considered as holding a monetary value, even if the game developer does not directly provide a cash-out system. It seems more regulators are moving towards the consensus that they are. I mean, Belgium is a famous example of a country claiming loot boxes as gambling, and many other countries are actively engaging and investigating this very issue. But whether they are deemed gambling or not doesn't even matter. Like I said, they won't be banned, just forced to be regulated. Meaning for adult players, they will still be very much accessible to us all if the developer wanted them in their game. And we will see next how powerful this gambling mechanic can be through the exploration of gacha games, a subgenre of games that have risen in popularity due to the addictive nature of their loot box system. Gacha games are built around a monetization system derived from Japanese capsule toy machines. Players spend in-game currency often bought with real money for a random chance at obtaining rare characters, weapons or items. The gambling-like effect of gacha does not come only from randomness, it comes from how randomness is packaged. In Genshin Impact, for example, the FTC alleged that players were pushed through a confusing chain of virtual currency exchange and were misled about the odds and likely real money cost of obtaining sought-after 5-star rewards. This led to the Federal Trade Commission banning the game developer from selling loot boxes to children under 16 without parental consent and were ordered to pay a $20 million fine. And they were right to protect its consumers. Sensor Tower estimated that the game generated about 245 million in its first month on mobile. By May 2022, Sensor Tower estimated that Genshin Impact had surpassed 3 billion in lifetime mobile revenue, averaging about 1 billion every 6 months on mobile alone. The reason why I don't like the epidemic rise of gachas solely comes down to how addictive loot boxes can be and the detriment they can have on the casual player. I actually don't care how good your game is and that you can play it for free. Do you actually think those numbers are a normal amount of money to make from a free game? Genshin Impact and gacha players are an official case study of players that have fallen victim to these gambling-like mechanics. And it's not their fault. When players invest money into a game, they struggle more to leave that game compared to if they had just bought it straight up. Pair that with studies showing that young adult gacha gamers showed higher problem gambling risk in those with greater gacha spending and more motives for gacha purchases. It can be easy to conclude gacha games design are more problematic than not. And this is what I hope this video has explained so far. I don't want to prove whether a game or system is gambling. I just want to raise awareness on how their gambling-like features are having a harmful effect on us players. In gambling, the crossover between fun and despair is often merged. Problem gamblers don't know they are one until it's already too late, in the same way that we may enjoy and have fun on these games until it could potentially lead to susceptible behavior towards gambling-like features. Gambling-like mechanics are not something new to gaming. Many old, beloved games have mechanics or features that resemble those discussed in this video. A game like Pokemon Red and Blue featured slot machines where players could gamble coins to win rare Pokemon prizes. Games like Red Dead just feature straight-up poker. Whatever it is, we have to accept that this is just a dark part of game design that is in place to keep us playing. They have always been present in all the games we love, and we have all been affected by it even if we had no idea it was happening to us. I just hope that game developers do not just focus on trying to extract every piece of attention, time, and money from us through gambling-like mechanics. So next time you play your favorite game, ask yourself, why am I playing this? Do I actually enjoy it? If you're honest with yourself, you might find you're already victim to the gambling epidemic in video games. If you enjoyed this video, a like and a comment would be greatly appreciated. This is one of the only few channels on YouTube mixing the lore with gaming, so if you want to see more of that, why not subscribe? I have another video on why guns are disappearing in games, or another on how mods are actually illegal. Go on, just click it.